ready, because deeper spending cuts are necessary, and as we saw from that government accounting report, duplicative programs exist. Madam Speaker, it's time to eliminate some of those programs, continue eliminating portions of this government, and get this fiscal House back on track. Thank you.
Gentleman's time's expired. The gentleman from Washington.
I yield 5 minutes to the distinguished gentleman from Maryland, the Democratic whip and former Majority Leader, who will help correct the record.
The gentleman from Maryland is recognized for 5 minutes.
I thank the gentleman for yielding. I've now heard, watched on television now, I've been on the floor with 2 members from Georgia, both of whom are brand new to this body, who are talking about the history. I want to tell my friend from Georgia a little bit of history. I've been here 30 years. I've served some 20 of those years under Republican presidents. Every one of them has run a deficit of $100 billion or more. In fact, during that cumulative period of 30 years, notwithstanding the Obama administration, and I'll discuss that in a second, Mr. Reagan, Mr. Bush I, and Mr. Bush II ran deficits of over $6 trillion that they signed the bills to spend. Over $6 trillion. Bill Clinton was president for 8 years. The last 4 years, we didn't raise the debt at all, unlike every one of the Republican administrations where we raised it on a regular basis. Not at all during the last administration, last 4 years of Mr. Clinton's. And he ran, the only president in your lifetime, and very frankly in mine, and I'm maybe twice as old as you are, $62.9 billion surplus. Look it up. No argument. But let me say something. Irrespective of who's responsible, we are responsible for fixing it. Republicans and Democrats. The American people know that we have a crisis confronting us. They know there is no option other than to deal with this realistically. I would call everybody in this body, Republican, Democrat, liberal, conservatives, attention to an article that was written by David Brooks today in the New York Times. Read it. Read it. It's not, David Brooks is a conservative columnist in the New York Times. We all ought to read this. Take it to heart. I called it to my conference's attention, or caucus's attention this morning. Our deep debt is a serious danger to our economy, to our future, and our children's opportunities. The American people want us to bring the debt down. They said so very loudly. And I doubt there's a member who disagrees. Democrats believe that spending cuts are part of the solution. Let there be no mistake. We need to cut spending. But we also believe that those cuts must be smart and targeted, not pegged to an arbitrary number. One of your staffers, when you put the Pledge to America, came forth with a figure, $100 billion. That's a nice round figure. $100 billion sounds good. Good PR, good spin, $100 billion. Read David Brooks. No analysis was given to that figure. No hearings were held on that figure. Nobody could testify on the cuts that were proposed to reach that figure. We have to cut the spending. We can do without some spending. Not the vital investments, however, that are helping to grow our economy, helping our private sector innovate, and creating the jobs of the future. During the Clinton administration, I will tell my young friend from Georgia, 22 million new jobs. During the Bush administration, we lost 8 million jobs. 30 million job turnaround. That's why there was so much spending of which Mr. Rogers spoke. $700 billion of that, of course, was asked for by the Bush presidency, Secretary Paulson and Mr. Bernanke, so that we didn't fall into a depression for the first time since Herbert Hoover. This president has been trying to bring us out, and frankly is succeeding. Unfortunately, Republicans passed a spending bill full of short-sighted and indiscriminate cuts. Do we need cuts? Yes. Do we need short-sighted and indiscriminate cuts? No. Just over a week ago, you would cut billions in energy and medical research, kick 200,000 children out of Head Start, make college more expensive, and stop 21st century infrastructure projects in 40 states. That's what Mr. Zandi was talking about. That's what Goldman Sachs is talking about. Cuts like these could cripple America's competitiveness and job growth. According to Moody's Analytics chief economist Mark Zandi, who advised Senator McCain's presidential campaign, Republican cuts would cost America a total of 700,000 jobs. The Economic Policy Institute puts it at 800,000. Rather than such job-destroying policies, both parties need to come together and reason together. Frankly, the American public doesn't care who works with whom. They just want it to work. This is no way to fund the largest enterprise in the world on 14-day cycles. The gentleman criticized us for doing it. We should have been criticized, but let me tell my friend what you didn't mention is one of the reasons we did it. Can I have an additional minute? One of the reasons we did it is because we could not get 60 votes in the United States Senate in order to move a bill forward. Keeping our government running is vital to our economy. None of us should want to shut down the government. It is also vital to the millions who rely on government every day. The sooner we can agree on a long-term package of smart cuts, not reckless, arbitrary, job-destroying cuts, the sooner we can stop funding the government in disruptive two-week increments. The gentleman was correct. We ought not to do that. We need to pass a 7-month funding so the government and all who rely on the government, who work for the government, who have contracts with the government, can rely on some certainty. You've talked a lot about certainty on your side of the aisle. You're absolutely right. We need certainty. The business community needs certainty, individuals need certainty, and the government needs certainty. Rather than passing two-week continuing resolutions, I urge Republicans and Democrats to work together on a long-term solution. In this case, long-term is 7 months, to reduce spending, to help balance our budget, and to try to bring rationality to this process. We cannot, my friends on the Republican side of the aisle and the Democratic side of the aisle, continue to look at 15% of the budget and expect us to get to where we need to be from where we now are. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Time's expired. Gentleman from Kentucky.
May I inquire of the time remaining? May I inquire of the time?
The gentleman has 9.5 minutes remaining, and the gentleman from Washington has 4 minutes remaining. Gentleman from Kentucky.
Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to a brand new member of the committee. Gentleman from Kansas, Mr. Yoder.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Gentleman from Kansas is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. We can debate today who's at fault for the crisis we're in, but I think we have an agreement. That agreement is with record spending, deficits, and accumulated debt, coupled with 20 months straight unemployment of 9% unemployment, it is time for us to get serious about the crushing effect of a runaway debt that it's having on this economy. As Speaker Boehner has said, just like a bankrupt business can't create jobs, a bankrupt country can't create jobs. Small business owners, individuals, and families now find themselves at the mercy of this debt that we as a government have recklessly accumulated. It's not Democrats or Republicans. It's those families and individuals and business owners. They are the real casualties of this government spending spree. So now we must choose a pathway. We are at a crossroads: reasonable spending reductions and keeping government open, or head towards devastating tax increases and crushing deficits. The tax increases that would be needed to actually alleviate these bloated deficits would wipe out individuals, families, and businesses. According to the CRS, current income tax rates would need to double across the board to close the expected deficits of this administration. You can't create jobs under these devastating taxes. We must reduce spending. We have a choice as American people. We can choose prosperity, we can choose lower taxes, and we can choose reduced debt. Or we can go the other direction and choose record-breaking deficits, historic taxes, and devastation all across this country. Madam Speaker, we have a choice to make today, and it's my hope the members of this body will choose to keep government open, to choose to make the beginning of modest reductions, and that we will pass this necessary resolution to begin the pathway towards prosperity again in this country. Thank you. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman from Kansas yields back the balance of his time. The gentleman from Washington.
I reserve. They've got a little more time. We want to let them have a couple of speakers.
Gentleman reserves. Gentleman from Kentucky.
Madam Speaker, I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Virginia, Mr. Hurt.
Gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 2 minutes.
I thank the chairman for yielding. Madam Speaker, last November, the people I represent in Virginia's 5th District sent an urgent message that America must make a bold departure from the status quo and put a stop to the out-of-control spending that has come to define Washington over the past 2 years. No longer can we continue on the path of unchecked, reckless spending that has crippled our economy and left us with a massive $14 trillion in debt, $1.6 trillion in deficit spending, and an unacceptably high unemployment rate. Last year, the 111th Congress completely failed in its fundamental responsibility to adopt a budget for the American people. Remarkably, they punted that responsibility and have kept the federal government operating over the last 5 months by adopting continuing resolutions. Fortunately, the new 112th Congress has accepted this responsibility to clean up the mess of the last Congress. Indeed, the House of Representatives, Republicans and Democrats, worked late into the night last week to get a proposal to the Senate that recognizes the critical need to adopt a budget while cutting an historic $100 billion in spending for the rest of this fiscal year. After 5 months of failed leadership by Senate Democrats, we now find they need more time. This is truly unbelievable. Over the past week, back home in the 5th District, I was reminded again and again by my constituents that now is time for leadership, not for excuses. While the House takes up another resolution today that will continue to temporarily fund the government while keeping our commitment to the people to cut an additional $4 billion in spending, it is critical that the Senate join us to produce a responsible funding resolution that makes the cuts necessary to get our fiscal house in order. For the sake of the next generation of Americans, we must act, and we must act now to secure our future. I yield back my time. I thank the Chairman.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time. Gentleman from Washington.
I yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from Virginia, the ranking member of the Interior and Environment Appropriations Committee and former Chairman, Jim Moran.
Gentleman from Virginia is recognized for 2 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. So many of our brand new colleagues seem to have run on the thesis that government can't be the solution to any of your problems, that it's the problem, that it can't be counted upon to help people, it can't even be counted upon to invest in America's long-term interest. It seems as though now they've been elected, they're doing everything they can to prove themselves to be right. This is no way to run a government. A 2-week CR? Now, we don't have any great problem with the components of this CR, except for the fact that it's 2 weeks. It should be a 7-month CR. In fact, we should really tackle the appropriation bills themselves. But if it's a 7-month CR, it shouldn't be a dump truck of legislation that includes in it virtually every controversial issue that this Congress has dealt with over the last 20, 30 years. My good friend from Kentucky, the chairman of the committee, will recall that quaint phrase that we would employ in committee, that this amendment is not in order because it constitutes legislating on an appropriations bill. Well, we legislated everything. This bill has more poison pills in it than Rasputin's medicine cabinet. Everything is thrown in here. And it was thrown in at the middle of the night. You know, bills that we had considered carefully in committee, that had come to the floor, that they were debated carefully, and then resolved. And yet, in sometimes a 10-minute debate, those bills were dispensed with. That's not the way an appropriations bill should be brought to the floor. It ought to be a clean, continuing resolution if we're going to do a CR. Can I have another 30 seconds here?
15. 30 seconds. I give him 30 seconds.
Gentleman is recognized for 30 seconds.
The fact is, we know we can do this. We can get a good appropriation bill. We can make surgical cuts, and we can agree on those surgical cuts. But let's not try to put together a dump truck that includes in it every possible controversial issue that we know we can't resolve. That's not in the long-term best interest of the American people, and in fact, it ought to be an embarrassment to our appropriations process. And so I would hope we would vote against this continuing resolution simply because it's only a 2-week CR. We can do better. Thank you, Madam Chairwoman.
Gentleman's time's expired. Gentleman from Kentucky.
Madam Speaker, I wish you'd done better last year and passed one appropriations bill. Madam Speaker, I ask unanimous consent that all members may have 5 legislative days in which to revise and extend their remarks and include extraneous material on H.J. Res. 44, and that I may include tabular material on the same.
Without objection.
Madam Speaker, I yield 3 minutes to the Chairman of the Mill, Con, and VA Subcommittee on Appropriation, gentleman from Texas, Mr. Culberson. 3 minutes.
Gentleman from Texas is recognized for 3 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'd like to yield 1 minute to my colleague from Georgia.
Gentleman from Georgia recognized for 1 minute.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I had to take a moment here to, I guess, comment back on the distinguished whip's comments a minute ago. And it's great that he pointed out his knowledge of history and his years of experience here. And he's right about a few things. He talked about the years of Bill Clinton and the spending cuts and the deficit reduction and debt reduction, all those kind of things. He's absolutely right. But he didn't tell you the rest of the story, and that is the Republicans took the majority in 1995 and were a part of that process and leading through the legislative process, not through the executive process. And then he talked about George Bush and the 8 million job losses. And if you look back, if you look at the rest of the story on that, again, that starts in about 2006 and 7 and 8, and if we think about who was in charge at the time, yes, it was the distinguished whip who was the leader at the time and the former speaker. So they were right. They were right about history, but they weren't telling the whole story, and that is that the Republicans were leading during those difficult times and providing the spending cuts when necessary. To the gentleman a minute ago who said government is not the solution, you're absolutely right. And to finish that quote from Ronald Reagan, more so it is the problem.
Gentleman from Texas.
Reclaiming my time, I think it's important to remember the people of America spoke decisively in the November election. It was as clear a referendum on the direction that President Obama and Speaker Pelosi are taking the nation as we could have, and the nation decisively rejected the agenda that Speaker Pelosi and President Obama were promoting. The spending that Chairman Rogers spoke about was out of control over these last several years. I know in the time I served under President Bush, I voted against about $2.6 trillion of new spending under President Bush. And just the last 2 years under President Obama and Speaker Pelosi, my staff calculates I've had to vote against about $7.6 trillion of spending under President Obama. So I know that the level of spending under President Bush was higher than it should have been, but it has absolutely gone vertical under President Obama. The country decisively rejected the direction that President Obama was taking the nation. The country elected this new majority to cut spending, to repeal Obamacare, and to put the nation back on track towards a balanced budget. And that's what this appropriations bill does. In this 2-week period, we're doing our best at every opportunity, on every occasion. Chairman Rogers and all of us are working to cut spending and to get the federal government out of our pockets, off our backs, and out of our lives. In every concept, and I'm happy to yield to the distinguished gentleman from Washington.
I was just glad to hear the litany of these things you voted against. Are you still for those Civil War battlefields?
There's a few core functions the government has to do, and I'll tell you that national defense, we've exempted. For example, we protected the Pentagon and national security. We protected the investments in medical and scientific research and in law enforcement. And you will find on every bill that we present, we're going to work to cut spending in every possible way.
Time's expired. Gentleman from Washington.
I am the only remaining speaker. Are you the only remaining speaker? And you have the right to finish. The majority has the right to finish. Is that correct?
Yes. The majority does have the right to finish, to close.
Well, I think this has been a very spirited debate in the best traditions of the House. I want to point out a few facts to, again, correct the record. First of all, the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act probably brought down the unemployment rate from 12 or 13% to 9.5%. We'd have a 12.5% unemployment rate today if it wasn't for the American Recovery Act. The only deficits that have been cut around here was the $41 billion that was done by the Democrats and enacted in December and passed to March 4th. Now, again, we did not get our work done. Mr. Rogers and I are going to get the work done. But again, gentlemen and ladies, it's the economy. You've got to put people back to work. And if the net impact of what you do, the cuts you make, are to throw people out of work, to cause the economy to stumble and stop the recovery and increase unemployment, then the deficit will go up. The only way you get this better is to drive down unemployment, get people working, get businesses producing, get the revenues coming in. That will do it. But what the best economists in this country say is what your medicine is not going to cure the patient. It could well harm the patient and cause things to get worse, not better. So that's why some people believe it's a timing issue. And yet, again, I want you to know we'll work together, and in this next 2 weeks, we got to get this thing resolved. I yield back my time.
Gentleman's time's expired. The gentleman from Kentucky.
How much time is remaining, Madam Speaker?
The gentleman from Kentucky has 3 minutes remaining.
Madam Speaker, and I yield myself the balance of the time.
Gentleman's recognized.
Let's be clear what it is we're voting on here today. This is a short-term, 2-week CR. It cuts a little over $4 billion in spending that both parties have agreed to in the past, both bodies of the House and Senate have agreed to in the past, and agreed to by the White House. So what are we talking about here? This is a 2-week extension. It's about as clean as you can make it. And oh, by the way, speaking about that bill we passed 2 weeks ago, H.R. 1, that cuts $61 billion off of current spending. Ben Bernanke, chairman of the Federal Reserve, says as late as today that that bill will have no harmful effect on the economy. I don't know that there's a bigger, better source on the economy than the chairman of the Federal Reserve. And he says, no problem. Now, what the Democrats want to do, Madam Speaker, this is pretty simple. They want to freeze spending. They want to freeze spending at the biggest bloated level we've ever had. They increased spending 84% over the last 2 years. Now they want to freeze and no go no higher. Well, it's bloated. We want to take it back down to where it's reasonable, where we can live with it. And so we don't want another $1.7 trillion a year deficit like they've had the last year, and before that, something approaching that. And so I ask members to vote for this short-term CR, give us time to work with the other body on H.R. 1 to find out what their position is, which we have no idea at this moment. They haven't acted. And so to avert a close down of the government, which is what we're after here, we want to give the Senate time to look at H.R. 1 and tell us what their position is so we can have a conversation about it. And frankly, 2 weeks is plenty of time. Plenty of time in the House. I know the Senate works a bit more slowly. But 2 weeks should be plenty. And so, Madam Speaker, I urge members to vote for this reasonable, fair, budget-cutting extension of the time to shut down the government. Vote yes, and keep the government operating. Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. All time for debate has expired. Pursuant to House Resolution 115, the joint resolution is considered read, and the previous question is ordered. The question is on engrossment and third reading of the joint resolution. Those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed say no. The ayes have it. The ayes have it. Third reading.
Joint resolution making further continuing appropriations for fiscal year 2011 and for other purposes.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Massachusetts rise?
Madam Speaker, I have a motion to recommit at the desk.
Is the gentleman opposed to the joint resolution?
I am opposed in its current form.
The gentleman qualifies. The gentleman from Massachusetts qualifies. The clerk will report the motion.
Mr. Keating of Massachusetts moves to recommit the joint resolution, House Joint Resolution 44, to the Committee on Appropriations with instructions to report the same back to the House forthwith with the following amendments. Page 18, line 21, strike the quotation marks and final period. Page 18, after line 21, insert the following. Section 227, for the period beginning on the date of the enactment of the further continuing appropriations amendments 2011 and ending on the date specified in Section 106(3) of this Act, no major integrated oil company as defined in Section 167H5B of the Internal Revenue Code of 1986 shall be eligible for any tax benefit or relief under the following provisions of such code to the extent attributable to such period. 1. Section 43. 2. Section 451. 3. Section 469 with respect to working interests in oil and gas property. 4. Section 613 and 613A with respect to percentage depletion for oil and gas. 5. Section 199 with respect to income derived from the production of oil and gas. For purposes of this section, the amount of any tax benefit or relief for any taxable year shall be treated as attributable to the period described in the preceding sentence in the same ratio that the portion of such period which is part of such taxable year bears to the entire taxable year.
Pursuant to the rule, the gentleman from Massachusetts is recognized for 5 minutes in support of his motion.
Thank you, Madam Speaker, and I rise to offer this motion to recommit, which I believe will greatly improve our fiscal health and ensure that we're responsible to all taxpayer dollars and the taxpayers of this great nation. We all agree, all of us, Republicans and Democrats alike, that cuts in wasteful spending are vital to our country's future. The decision that stands before us is whether we should adopt reckless cuts to some of our most important programs or not. Education cuts, cuts to college scholarships, reading teachers, Head Starts. And as a DA for the last decade, I know the effects of cuts to police officers and firefighters, and I know what they mean to our public safety. Reckless cuts, cuts to border protection, cuts to hubs of cybersecurity research so that we can better protect ourselves and our infrastructure. Cuts in cancer research and other life-saving ventures of the National Institute of Health. It's worth repeating that Moody's chief economic expert, Mark Zandi, the former advisor to the McCain for President campaign, just this week estimated that the reckless Republican cuts will cost our country 700,000 jobs. Investment groups estimate that the reckless cuts will cut the economy by a growth this year of almost 1/2. Our alternative is an alternative of sensible spending cuts. In this motion, we're offering such a sensible spending cut. Let's stop sending taxpayers' money to the most profitable companies in the world. The time is now to stop subsidizing the largest oil companies. I think it shocks every American taxpayer to know that they're required to fork over $40 billion in subsidies over the next decade to the most economically profitable of companies, especially as oil soars to $100 per barrel. My constituents in Plymouth, Massachusetts, are paying almost $3.50 per gallon, and they've had enough. Even ex-Shell CEO, John Hofmeister, says enough is enough. He said, and I quote, "With high oil prices, such subsidies are not necessary." So let's put a stop to this welfare program for big oil right now. Cuts to police, cuts to fire, cuts to cancer research, cuts to border security, cuts to reading teachers, or oil subsidies to the most profitable of companies. I urge my colleagues to vote yes on this motion to recommit, and I return the balance of my time, and I yield that back. Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Gentleman yields back the balance of his time.
Can he reserve time?
For what purpose does the gentleman from Kentucky rise?
Madam Speaker, I rise in opposition to the gentleman's motion to recommit. If I understand the gentleman's motion...
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
If I understand the gentleman's motion correctly, it would, for a 2-week period, attempt to change the tax code to single out resource companies and increase their cost of doing business. This misguided policy can only lead to higher energy prices, continued reliance on foreign oil, and economic hardship that hampers job creation. At a time when gasoline is currently approaching $4 a gallon around the country, and when our resources are being threatened by the instability in the Middle East, we should be encouraging domestic energy production, not cutting it down. We're talking about a 2-week continuing resolution to keep the government running past Friday, reduce spending, and avoid a government shutdown. This is neither the time nor the place to interject an unrelated, job-crushing, controversial rider to the CR that will absolutely hinder its chance of passing in the Senate before this Friday when the current CR expires. I urge defeat of this ill-advised motion, and I want to yield the balance of my time to the gentleman from Idaho, Mr. Simpson, Chairman of the Interior Subcommittee Appropriations.
I thank the Chairman for yielding. Madam Speaker, if this wasn't such a serious subject that we're discussing here, the federal budget and how we're going to fund it for the next 2 weeks, it would almost be funny. Almost every member of the Democratic Party that has stood up and talked about this CR has said something like this. Even the sponsor of this motion said something along these lines. Democrats know we have to reduce spending. Democrats want to reduce spending, yet the very first time they have a chance to vote to reduce spending, reductions that the administration agrees with in its 2012 budget and eliminating earmarks, the Democrats vote no. It's strange but true. In fact, instead of cutting spending, they propose to increase revenue or increase taxes. In this fragile economy with energy prices rising, we should be encouraging more energy and gas development and production in the United States. We need more supply, not less supply. This would reduce the supply. Oil prices are rising again, and with the wave of unrest in the Middle East and North Africa, there are fears that we could soon see a return to $4 or $5 gas in the United States this summer. The moratorium put in place following the Deepwater Horizon accident was lifted last fall by the administration, but the administration has issued just one deepwater permit in the Gulf, and that was issued just yesterday. The federal judge called this de facto deepwater drilling moratorium unreasonable, unacceptable, and unjustifiable. The public will have no patience for more delays, more excuses, and higher taxes if gas prices continue to rise, especially when we have untapped resources here in the United States not being utilized. We need to be encouraging more production in this country, not discouraging production in this country. Oil and gas from federal lands, both onshore and offshore, provide an important energy source and domestic jobs, billions of dollars and billions of dollars of revenue to the United States. This is a job-killing proposal. This is an issue that needs to be addressed carefully and in great detail. A rush to impose new taxes and fees through a motion to recommit is hasty and unwise. We ought to let the committees of jurisdiction address this issue. I strongly, in the strongest terms, encourage my colleagues to vote against this ill-conceived motion to recommit and yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back the balance of his time. Does the gentleman from Kentucky yield back?
I'm prepared to yield back if the gentleman does. What? Yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Without objection, the previous question is ordered on the motion to recommit. The question is on the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. No. In the opinion of the chairs, the noes have it. The motion is not agreed to.
Madam Speaker, I ask for the yeas and nays.
The yeas and nays are requested. Those favoring a vote by the yeas and nays will rise. A sufficient number having risen, the yeas and nays are ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. Pursuant to Clause 8 and Clause 9 of Rule 20, this 15-minute vote on the motion to recommit will be followed by 5-minute votes on passage of the joint resolution, if ordered, and approval of the journal, if ordered.
The House has been debating a temporary spending bill which cuts $4 billion and provides funding for the federal government programs through Friday, March the 18th. The current continuing resolution expires this Friday, March the 4th. This is a vote on the Democratic motion to recommit. The motion would end subsidies, federal subsidies to big oil companies. Laura Litvan is the Senate leadership reporter with Bloomberg. After the House wraps up work on this temporary spending bill, it'll head to the Senate. How's it going to be received by senators, and what's the timetable for getting it done there?
Well, Senate Majority Leader Harry Reid today had a closed-door meeting with all Senate Democrats and talked about their options, and he came out afterwards and said that he's resolved to bring up the House bill, what the House passes, including the $4 billion in cuts, and that the Senate will act on this within 48 hours and send that on to the White House for Obama's signature.
It's kind of rare that things make it out of the House and into the Senate unscathed. Is he pretty sure he can get this through just the way it is?
Well, he has a situation where the Republicans, who have 47 seats, want to do what the House does. And as he said, he's offered other suggestions, including trying to get a longer-term extension beyond the 2 weeks that the House is approving, wanted to try to take that to 30 days. He's made various suggestions. He says they've been rejected. And they're going to go ahead and pass this and then focus on the larger fight ahead, which is really over the rest of the fiscal year.
Well, as Senator Reid was making those comments today, the White House was indicating support for a possible 4- or 5-week continuing resolution, doubling the amount of cuts in the bill up to $8 billion.
Yes, it was very interesting. That was going on just as that same meeting was going on, and right in advance of the meeting of the Senate Democrats, the chairman of the Senate Appropriations Committee told reporters that they were looking at that kind of an option, which deeper cuts over a longer period of time so they could have more time to work out the broader bill for the rest of the year. But things seem to happen very quickly today up here on this matter as the Democrats and Republicans are trying to avert the shutdown, and the Democrats seem to be more resolved to focus on the bigger fight ahead.
Well, as the next temporary spending bill heads over to the U.S. Senate, what key senators and issues should our viewers keep an eye on as this debate gets underway this week?
Well, the real issue is going to be where the broader cuts are going to be. Mitch McConnell, the Senate Republican leader, is endorsing the idea of seeking the $61 billion in cuts that the House is looking at, but not necessarily endorsing what they're looking at. And there's some very controversial aspects of the House bill, cuts for Planned Parenthood funding, and there's cuts for the health care overhaul. And these are some real big policy issues that would have to be wrestled with if the Senate tries to look at this. What it really comes down to is what's going to be able to be passed in the Senate. That's going to have a lot of weight. Today, John Boehner, the House Speaker, did talk to his rank and file in their own closed-door meeting today about the difficulty of getting cuts. He said there are going to be cuts, but it's going to be difficult, kind of preparing them a little bit, I think, for some compromising. And so things are going to come over here, and we're going to see if the Republicans are going to, what type of cuts they're going to push for, how far the Democrats are going to be willing to look at this, and it's going to be quite a battle.
Laura Litvan, who covers Senate leadership and Senate issues for Bloomberg, thanks for the update.
Thank you.
And here on the U.S. House floor again, this is a first of a couple of votes here. This is the motion to recommit by Democrats. That motion would call for an end to oil subsidies. Final passage is next on the $4 billion cuts, the temporary continuing resolution through Friday, March the 18th. Laura Litvan mentioned that comments by Senator Harry Reid today. He came out in between at the party lunches today in the Ohio Clock area, said he expects a vote in the Senate in the next 48 hours on that short-term spending bill. He also said the president will be stepping up his involvement in negotiations over spending for the rest of the year. Here are Senator Reid's comments from earlier today.
I know everyone's here to talk about the patent bill. And I've got a great statement on the patent bill. Should I start on page 2 rather than page 1? Anyway, we have the patent bill. We hope to finish it this week. There should be 2 or 3 relevant amendments at this stage. There are a lot of message amendments, and we'll try to get rid of those as soon as we can. That's my statement.
expect a vote on the CR that we expect to pass the House, the 2-week short-termer?
I think we'll have a vote on that in the next 48 hours.
Will you accept the House bill as unamended?
Yeah, we had a good discussion in our caucus. I've had, of course, a number of meetings outside the caucus, and it's our belief that the bill that we will vote on this week has no riders on it, that H.R. 1 was so did such bad things to so many programs. Not a single one of them is on this bill, and they've taken our numbers. These are our numbers. So we'll pass this, and then we'll look to funding the government on a long-term basis. The President's going to get involved in this. He has already talked to Boehner in the last little bit. I've been in here when he did it. I talked to the White House quite a few times this morning, and we're going to work on long-term funding of this government. It's obvious that we would want more than 2 weeks to do this, but the Republicans are bound and determined to stuff the next matter with a lot of this really bad stuff out of H.R. 1, and we're going to work with them. I'm anxious to meet with McConnell and Boehner and anyone from the White House at any time. We need to work our way through this. But the sooner we get this short-term funding of the government done, the quicker we can move to a long-term CR. That is where we're headed. Yes.
Do you have any sense that now you're doing anything more than just kicking the can down the road to March 18th? Or can you actually, do you feel like you'll find agreement?
I think that we have to find agreement. I think the President feels that we have to find agreement. The President is going to take this to the American people, because the only message that we have from the Republicans is to wipe out programs that are so important to people, especially people who can't help themselves, the middle class, and other programs. So, no, we feel we're in a good position. I'm hopeful that we can work something out with the Republicans to get this done.
With the economy still shaky and doing this every 2 weeks piecemeal, is this a good way to govern?
No, it's a terrible way to govern, and no one is more of an expert on that than presidential candidate John McCain's chief economic advisor, Mark Zandi, who's now the head of Moody's, who says that if the Republicans get what they want, as I understand what he said, it's 700,000 jobs we're going to lose. Oh yeah, we've had a number of conversations. Well, I'm not going to get into the private. I'm not going to get into the private conversations I had. David, we've made a number of suggestions to the Republicans that it would be better to have a longer period of time to fund the government on the long term. They've rejected that, so that's why we're not doing 30 days. You know, we've made a lot of suggestions.
Has the administration been involved enough?
Yes, but have they been involved enough?
No, yes, officially.
Well, I think they should be involved more, and I think they will be.
Those riders that you were discussing, do you see that possibly that many of them can pass the Senate? That's what Congress decided to keep them.
We'll look at every one of them. Those that I've seen are terribly mischievous and wrong-headed, wrong-sided. You know, if there are things, for example, I think the report we just got from GAO, I think that is constructive. I think there are duplicative programs around here that we could eliminate. And so I support, I don't say this very often, but I'm glad Coburn asked for that. That's a step in the right direction. And those are some of the things we can do over the long term that could save some money.
What would be the way for those riders?
You mean the Coburn stuff?
Yeah.
No, I think, we can only do it here legislatively. That's how it can be done. Last question, yes.
Month-long CR cutting to $8 billion. What's your reaction? That's something you can support or bring up here?
They put it where?
Carney was briefing this afternoon.
Yeah. Well, as I said, we've made a number of suggestions to the Speaker over the weeks, and there are, as I said, a number of suggestions. and they've rejected all of them. Well, he's going to become more engaged, as he's indicated he will, and I know he will. He has the bully pulpit in the White House, which is very important.
Well, hello, everyone. Good to see you again. Two observations. Number one, as you know, the House is going to send over to us today a two-week continuing resolution with $4 billion reduction in domestic discretionary accounts. We're confident that that will clear the Senate. It represents a pro rata share of what would be reduced over the next 2 years had we passed the $60 billion reduction in the initial House bill. And then we'll continue to talk with our Democratic friends in the White House about where to go from here with regard to the balance of this fiscal year. I want to next call on Senator Coburn, who asked for a GAO report on programmatic duplication in the federal government. This report represents only a portion of our discretionary accounts, but Senator Coburn can outline to you what the GAO has discovered in terms of our, virtual incompetence at duplicating programs in a variety of different ways over the years. Tom?
Thank you, Mr. Leader. Well, with the last debt limit extension, we added by a vote of 94-0 in the Senate a requirement for the GAO over the next 3 years to bring to us the duplications in the federal government. The easy part is what they gave us, the first third, which was released this morning, which shows at least $100 billion of waste in discretionary programs. When we're borrowing $3 billion a day, and we have a CR that's going to save $4 billion a week, you can see the kind of hole we're in. And within that, and I would ask every one of you to look at this report, because none of us would run our families this way, none of us would run our businesses this way, and there is tremendous potential for us to accomplish great things for the American public and still take care of those that require a safety net by eliminating duplication and the dollars that we're spending that we don't get anything in return for.
Anybody else want to? We'll take a couple of questions, if there are any. I can't hear you.
Sorry, when you get past the short-term CR window and you're looking to fund the government through the end of the fiscal year, is it your position that you want the Senate to adopt the policy measures that were passed in House CR a couple weeks ago?
I'm not sure what your question is, but my position is that we ought to continue to negotiate the issue of the size and scope of the government under this year's budget. And we're going to make a decision here this week on the next 2 weeks, and after that we'll start negotiating where we go from here, both in terms of the length of the extension and the depth of the cuts. But what I think is noteworthy, even though, as Senator Coburn pointed out, you could argue that $4 billion in the context of an over $3 trillion budget is not a lot of money, it is at least the first time since I've been here that I can recall cutting anything of any consequence. And I hope that's the beginning of a trend.
Senator, the White House today floated
I believe what the House is going to send over is a 2-week CR, and I'm rather confident that's where we'll end up.
Mr. Leader, what do you think about this 2 weeks governing, 2 weeks here? Should there be a longer process? Are you going to just keep doing this?
Well, I think what we need to do is reduce government spending, and we're happy to talk about how to do that, how much, what the length of time is. I think most of my members, I'm pretty confident in saying, think that what the House did for the balance of the year was a good idea. I would hope maybe our colleagues on the other side of the aisle would decide that that might be something they could support. That's the kind of negotiation that I can't do with you guys, but we'll be discussing it with the White House and with Senate Democrats.
Is this a good way to govern?
The best way to govern is to quit spending more money than we take in. This year we're going to spend $1.5 trillion more than we're taking in. That is a terrible way to govern. What we want to do is reduce government spending this year. The worst way to run the government is to spend $1.5 trillion more this year than we're taking in. We've added $3 trillion to the debt in the last, since the beginning of the Obama administration, while we've lost 3 million jobs. I think you could argue pretty persuasively that's the worst way to run the government, and we want to stop that, and that's what this exercise is about.
Senator, can you give us an idea of the depth? You talked about the depth of cuts in the longer-term CR. Can you give us some idea of what you would like to see in terms of the depth?
Well, as I said earlier, what I'd like to see is us to adopt the House position. There seems to be some reluctance to do that on the part of the administration and Senate Democrats, so we'll keep talking about how to go forward. Yeah, I like what the House did. I think most of my members did as well. We don't control the government, so we'll see where we go from here after the 2 years. Thanks a lot, everybody.
So the Senate Majority and Minority Leader agreeing that they're likely to pass the temporary spending bill, the 2-week continuing resolution, which the House will vote on shortly. This is a vote on the motion to recommit proposed by the Democrats, which would end subsidies to big oil companies. 15-minute vote and final passage vote will be coming up momentarily. While those briefings were going on at the U.S. Capitol and just outside the U.S. Senate, White House Press Secretary Jay Carney, shortly before that, had said President Obama had spoken to House Speaker John Boehner to talk about negotiations over the continuing resolution. Also in the briefing, he indicated that the White House would support a short-term spending measure that doubles the Republican cuts to $8 billion. Here, we're going to show you some of what Jay Carney had to say during the briefing today as this vote continues.
I'd also just like to inform you that the President, about 40 minutes ago, made a phone call to Speaker of the House, John Boehner, to discuss the progress being made on the negotiations for a continuing resolution. It was about a 10 to 12-minute phone call, a good phone call, and you will ask, but I will not divulge any more details about that phone call, but I just wanted you to know that that had taken place. Let's start with questions. Ben.
Thanks, Jay. Two topics quickly. On the spending standoff you just mentioned there, the House is moving ahead with this 2-week stopgap bill. Is the White House engaged at all in trying to prevent this from becoming a 2-week after 2-week cycle where the government stays afloat but there's really no long-term continuity? What's the White House doing, if anything, about that?
Well, the White House is obviously engaged at various levels, including at the presidential level, as I just noted. We believe some progress has been made. We believe that there is a focus in Congress now on cuts that we all can agree on. Is committed to reducing spending. And as he has made clear, and as you know, in these negotiations on the continuing resolution, that he is committed to spending cuts. We can agree on those. We also believe that this process should be one in which there is enough time allowed for all sides to come together to reach an agreement on a long-term continuing resolution so that we can fund the government for the remainder of the year. That in turn will allow us to focus on the many other challenges that we face and that the American people want us to work on. So without getting into what is acceptable or unacceptable, our goal here is that we get a continuing resolution that is clean, that deals with the spending cuts we can agree on. We do believe that if $4 billion in cuts over 2 weeks is acceptable, that the $8 billion over 4 or 5 weeks is something that we could agree on. Again, if it was a clean continuing resolution, that would also allow the time. But our point here is not this amount of time versus that amount of time, but our focus is on moving beyond the short-term CR and focusing on negotiations for a longer-term CR that allows us to tighten our belts, live within our means, and continue to invest in the areas of the economy we think are essential to invest in order to keep growing and creating jobs.
Well, how does 2 weeks, though, give any of the parties the time needed to do exactly what you're talking about? Is the President wanting some other path forward?
Well, I think I just mentioned that another option would be a longer CR with substantially more spending cuts included, as essentially spending cuts that would go into an escrow against the long-term, the total number of cuts in a longer-term deal. But the point is, whether it's 2 weeks, 2 weeks and 2 days, 3 weeks, 4 weeks, the point is that what we do not believe would be helpful, in fact, we believe it would be harmful to the economy, and therefore not something the American people would support, is that if we created a toll booth where we are negotiating again and again on continuing resolutions to fund the government for 2 weeks or another short-term period. I mean, there may be a process where we do that once or twice, but the focus needs to be on the longer-term deal so that we can come to an agreement, find common ground, and then put that in place so that we can focus on the longer-term issues that we all realize the nation faces and the American people want us to grapple with. Hold on, let me just get. Yes.
On this vote, the ayes are 176 and the nays are 249. The motion is not adopted. The question is on the passage of the joint resolution. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. The joint resolution is passed, and without objection, the motion to reconsider is laid upon the table.
Madam Speaker, I ask for a recorded vote. I ask for a recorded vote.
Gentleman from Kentucky, a recorded vote is requested. Those favoring a recorded vote will rise. A sufficient number having risen, a recorded vote is ordered. Members will record their votes by electronic device. This will be a 5-minute vote.
The House moves on to final passage on this temporary spending bill, cutting $4 billion in spending, providing funding for government programs for the next 2 weeks through March the 18th anyway, as the current continuing resolution expires this Friday. Meanwhile, over in the Senate, Majority Leader Harry Reid, in comments we showed you a short while ago, told reporters he expects the bill to be passed this week in the U.S. Senate and go to President Obama for his signature in the next 48 hours. So 5-minute vote on the House floor, one more after this, and that'll be a procedural vote on the Journal, the official written record of the U.S. House, the previous day's record, and that'll do it for recorded votes this afternoon.
335, and the nays are 91. The joint resolution is passed, and without objection, a motion to reconsider is laid upon the table. Pursuant to Clause 8 of Rule 20, the unfinished business is the question on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the journal, which the Chair will put de novo. The question is on agreeing to the Speaker's approval of the journal, and all those in favor will signify by saying aye. Opposed say no. In the opinion of the chairs, the ayes have it. The ayes have it. The journal is stand approved. I must have been a leader dog in a former life. How was your break last week? Did you get a chance to get away a little bit?
Yeah, it took me a while to catch up on sleep. I don't bounce back the way I used to.
Yeah, me too. It took me about 2 days. I can't do those all-nighters anymore. I used to be able to do them, it never bothered me. Now I'm like, whoa. We have a condo down in Cocoa Beach. We never get a chance to go there. Anyway, we went there for last weekend. We saw the shuttle walk. It was unbelievably fantastic.
Was it a daytime launch?
Yes, well, 5 o'clock, yeah. So that's the last...
I went down to see one time when it got struck.
Yeah. This one, actually, I've seen several of them. The landings as well. I mean, they're all, of course, the last one for that vehicle discovered. Gabriel Giffords' husband has been a pilot for one in April and then one in June. But so there was an enormous amount of people because of the They almost struck that one.
What is struck one?
The House will be in order.